Hey everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of Peak Performance brought to you by Pinnacle Appliance Support. Today we're going to be talking about service modes and diagnostics on Fulgor Milano and Fhiaba built-in refrigeration and combis, or built-in combis and columns. My apologies. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about some of the settings, some of the features, some of the functions, and then we're going to get into the actual service mode on it. What I like to do sometimes is wipe down the display. Since this is a TFT display, it will gather some moisture, some condensation on there. And since it's touchscreen, it may not detect your finger being pressed. So as you see up here, we have our display. You can see your fresh food settings, freezer settings, and then you have a functions button and a settings button. You also have a main power button. This is going to be your soft off. It's just going to shut the machine down, and it's not going to do anything as far as like shutting off the breaker like a hard reset. You have a home button, so if you're anywhere in the menus, you can push your home button and jump right back to this screen. You have an alarm button. This is a special little button. When you push this, if you see a little triangle icon in the top right corner, that means that there's an error code or an error message or something that the machine wants to tell you. This is usually be flashing at that point too, so that's an extra signal to let you know that there may be an alarm code of some sort. So push this button and it'll tell you the alarm. It'll let you know the message. It may say just clean your condenser. And it may not be something service related. You just may need to do some maintenance on the machine. And then you have a back button. Your back button is obviously going to do what it does. It's going to take you back from the menu you were just in. So like I said, you can change temperatures. This fresh food section, you can scroll up or down. They come preset from the factory at 41 degrees. We've had the door open for some time, so we're up at 59 degrees right now. It's a rolling average. So when the customer does change that temperature and then hit OK, it's not going to automatically display that temperature. It's going to show the rolling average. Once it hits that temperature, it'll maintain that temperature. Same thing for the freezer. Push the freezer button, or excuse me, freezer temperature, and you can scroll and adjust your temperatures there. Freezer comes preset at 0. So this is your TFT display. It's called a thin film transistor. It's very much like an iPhone. The original version of this was a LCD screen with multiple buttons on either side, and it was a little bit harder to navigate. So I'm going to pop into some functions and settings. So if you think about it, functions are things that the machine can do. So you're going to have it do a special function. Settings are things that you can set the machine as far as like Celsius, Fahrenheit, the time, the date, things of that nature. So we'll start on functions, just kind of show you around. Max cool fridge, holiday mode, max cool fresh zone, and beverage cooler. These are all different features that you would use at different times. So if you're going to be going away on vacation, you can pop it into holiday mode, or it'll run at an eco-friendly state. If you're going to go shopping and you're going to come home and put a bunch of groceries inside the fridge and freezer, you can put max cool fridge and max cool fresh zone on. That way it'll drop the temperatures down to the lowest possible temperatures it can. So that way it knows you're going to have the doors open for some time loading some groceries, and it won't have to work so hard to get back down to temperatures. As you can see, if you leave it there, it will default back to your home screen. We're going to swipe over one time. Now we have some more functions. You have ice maker, water filter, and a system cleaning. System cleaning is a big one we'll talk about here in a second. So ice maker, push ice maker button. You can choose whether you want ice maker on or off. When your ice maker is on, it will be illuminated. On a Fhiaba unit, this is a Fulgor unit, on a Fhiaba unit, when the ice maker is on, it will not be illuminated. You will see a red box around it, and that will let you know that it's on. So we're going to go ahead, and then when you push ice maker, you can do different things. You can set your cube size, and you can make fast ice, which will produce ice slightly faster than typical ice. So I'm going to push the back button, get out of that menu. So water filter. Your water filter is located up inside this section up here. Push down, pull out. Can't really see up in there, but your filter's up here. It does not come with a filter installed, comes inside the crisper bin, but this is where you would enable your filter reminder. So since we have a filter installed here, we would say yes, but you can also, it's just a countdown for 365 days. So if the customer does not need a water filter, or they have a whole home water filtration system, RO system, and they don't need this filter, all you simply do is do not put the filter in. It automatically bypasses inside the manifold. So if you do not need a filter, you would turn this reset off. Disable reminder, yes. That way it's not going to remind them every year to change the filter if they're not using one. Now here's the big one, system cleaning. To run system cleaning, you must turn ice maker off. This is the only way that you can run this system cleaning. This is pressurizing the system. This is going to test your ice maker, your water valves, and the communication between your electronics and your ice maker. So if the customer has no ice, no errors, or they have an error code that has like 8 no water in and they're not making any ice, you can run this test and see if you've got function from the ice maker and see if you've got fill from the fill valves themselves and water supply from the water supply. So during the system cleaning, we also have a video about this as well on our YouTube channel, but system clean, manual clean, yes. What this is doing in this moment is cycling the ice maker to harvest, and it's going to rotate and then rotate back to the home position and then kind of sit halfway, because after this is done cycling, the unit's going to say, go ahead and push start to enter, or enter to start. And what that does, it opens both water valves at the same time and allows about 3 cups of water to enter through the ice maker into the ice bucket. So you're going to want to make sure your freezer is shut and your ice bucket is underneath the ice maker during that part of the test. So this should say ready to start here in a second once this ice maker rotates. Okay, so it says start cleaning. So the ice maker has rotated. We know we have communication at this point. So as a technician, we just figured out something. We just realized now we have communication and voltage from the main board down to the electronics down here, or on the ice maker. It's a great sign. Now we're going to push enter to start. You have an ellipses that tells you how long this is going to run for. You can hear both water valves kick on. It's going to fill that ice bucket with about 3 cups of water. You can measure it out. That'll kind of determine what the customer's water pressure is. But if a customer has no ice and that's their number one complaint or their service call concern, this would be the service test I would run. This isn't going into service menu yet. This is just a function that you can do to this machine. The main reasoning behind this is because the Fulgor Milano units do not have a water dispenser, but they do have an ice maker. Fhiaba units do have a water dispenser. So as you install these refrigerators, you want to pressurize the system so that way there's water throughout the system. So when the ice maker calls for water, it's actually filling with water. Without pressurizing the system, the first couple times the ice maker calls for water, it's not filling with anything. It's actually just pushing air through the system. And then eventually, after 10 attempts of it trying to push water through and it not having a change in temperature on the actual sensor, then it knows that there's an issue and it will give you an error code. But since we do not have a dispenser on the Fulgor Milanos, you must run manual clean during installation. So once the unit's installed, run manual clean, make sure you have water in your ice bucket. Now it says empty water from ice bin, replace ice bin. So at this point is when you're going to pull that ice bucket out and dump it into the sink. Make sure you've got about 3 cups of water in there. Once this is done, it's going to go through an initial startup. So when you first plug the machine in, it'll say initial startup phase and initial test. The initial test is just low voltage things it's going to tell you, or it's going to check, make sure the lights and fans are running, things like that. So system cleaning, anything to check ice maker function, water filter, or excuse me, water function and water entering through the ice maker. You also have a fill tube heater that can come into play. If that heater fails, it may fill a ice dam inside that fill tube and prevent it from filling. So there's other things to check, but this is a great tool and resource to at least pressurize the system, check communication between your electronics and your ice maker, and confirm that they can actually communicate. Because oftentimes, if you have no ice and no errors, the machines may have just lost communication, and a simple hard reset, shutting off the breaker, turning on the breaker, will regain consciousness and communication between the two. All right, so those were functions. Actually, I want to go back because I want to show you one more of the functions. So we also have, oh, my apologies, it's actually under settings, is demo mode. So dealers often have to put the machines in demo mode, but this is one of the function or settings. So you've got date, you can set your date, your time, Celsius, Fahrenheit, the language you'd like to display, the fresh zone reset. So you're going to reset the machine anytime there's an error code and you made a repair. Let's say it was a sensor error code and you replace the sensor. You must reset the machine to erase those error codes or they will recall themselves. And then you have your demo mode and Sabbath mode. So demo mode, very easy to enter. We have a super secret code. So then it's going to ask you demo mode on or off. So right now we'll just turn it on for fun. Demo mode is highlighted, so you can see demo mode is on. The unit at this point, compressor shut down, fan shut down, we just have lights, the unit's in demo mode. Sometimes units get sold off of a showroom floor, they may still be in demo mode. Customer calls and says it's not cooling. May just be able to scroll over to demo mode to see if it's illuminated. If it is, push it. Super secret code. We're going to turn demo mode off. Now it's not illuminated anymore. You'll hear the compressors kick on, the fans kick on, and everything ramp back up. Then you have one more page. This is maintenance, service, and information. So information is going to tell us about the machine, some software and hardware versions. This is important. It also shows you a serial number. As a technician, I would take a picture of this because if you call for service and you call for tech support, we may ask you for the versions of software. This will help us help you guys in the field. So let's go ahead and push the service button. There's also a super secret code for getting into service mode. First step of service mode is going to be your temp probe readout. So during this temp probe readout, it is unfortunately all in Celsius and you have to do some conversion, but this tells us a lot of information. We've got air sensors, evap sensors, we've got your condenser sensor and your ice maker sensor. This will tell a refrigeration technician a lot about what's going on inside of the machine just off of the sensor readings alone. And just as a little tidbit, if you see a -40 readout on anywhere you would normally have a sensor, -40 is an automatic open sensor. It's just a bad sensor. It must be replaced. So if you push enter at this point, you're going to go into service mode. If you only wanted to see your sensor readings and you don't want to go into service mode because once you enter it, you must continue. You can't exit unless you follow the entire program, which is like 32 to 36 steps depending on the machine that you're working on. So as you can see, you can back out of this before going to service mode. So let's actually go into service mode. First thing again, you're going to see is your temp probe readout, but we're going to push enter. Now, there's only a few tests that I would personally go into service test for because there are so many steps and it is a very linear service mode. You can't go backwards, you can only go forwards. So I would go in here to test compressors, fans, heaters, because as I scroll through, you'll see things like RGB lighting and things like glass door that are just legacy features on previous models and generations. So you maybe end up pushing the OK button more than you would actually be doing any kind of testing. So just be mindful of that. So the first two tests are always your compressors. So this one is where you're going to check from the main board or to your inverter. You can check and make sure you've got voltage to your main supply 120, about 8-volt DC signal, and then you've got frequency coming through that 8-volt DC signal Molex plug for the compressor to run. As the compressor ramps up in speed, you can watch the hertz or frequency on your meter rise and fall as well. So that's first compressor test. This is going to be fresh food compressor test. This is going to be freezer compressor test. V3 is always your freezer section. If you see a V2, that's if you set your freezer section for a fresco cooler or as a refrigerator. So now we're going to check fan condenser. So that, again, we check some fans, compressors, heaters. There's only a few things I would go in here for. You can check your ice maker, but it's not going to fill. It's just going to rotate the ice maker. Also, you can check your lights, but you can also check your reed switch by opening the door or putting a magnet up against here and making sure that the lights and fans come on and off. RGB lighting. It's not something that's in this machine. So again, legacy feature. It's not something that's going to pertain to this model. And we're just going to kind of bypass those. V3 heater. This is going to check your freezer heater. So this is where you're going to go to your main board, make sure you've got voltage down to your heater. You can even check continuity of the heater at your main board. V3 fan, freezer fan. You should hear that fan ramp up in speed. If I was able to open this right now, you can hear that fan running. So it's a visual, you can see it running, you can hear it running, you can even check for voltage off your main board. Tri-flow LEDs, and this is all LEDs inside the freezer section. Again, more RGB lighting. This is does not pertain to this model. There is no heater on our ice maker. It is a twist tray ice maker, so this is unnecessary as well. E-valve gas, unnecessary. Sensor probes. These are your water valves. It's going to test independently valve 1, valve 2. There's fill and safety, valve 1, valve 2. V1 heater, there is no fresh food heater. It's off-cycle defrost. V2 heater is if you had your fresh or your freezer set to fresco cooler or refrigerator. V2 air, since we're reading 0 degrees, is because we have the freezer set to freezer. If we had the freezer set to a fresco cooler, this would give us an actual readout right here. Same thing with the evap. Since we're not using it as a fresco cooler or a refrigerator, it's not going to give us a temperature because we're using it as a freezer. So when we start seeing V3, you'll start seeing some temperatures here. V2 fan, again, we're not using it as a fresco cooler. V1 fan, fresh food fan. I can feel the airflow. I can hear the fan running. Again, visual test. You can feel the fan running. If you're a nerd like me and you want to open this up and check your voltage to the fan and make sure that you got proper voltage, because it changes. You got 18 volts when compressor is off, 24 volts when the compressor is on. So you may plug in your meter and say, I'm only getting 18 volts this time. Last time I was getting 24 volts. There's differences between the two, so it's a good thing to know. Ice maker cycle. So this is what I was telling you about. This is going to cycle the ice maker, make sure that it has communication. It's not going to fill with water. It's just cycling the ice maker. At this point, if you have a talkative customer and you're not paying attention to this and you're kind of just chatting along, being cordial, doing your normal thing, if you don't catch this at a specific moment after it cycles, the bail arm drops down, checks ice level, comes back up, and it says ice level low or ice level high if there's ice in it, and you push OK to get to the next step. If you skip that and don't press it during that time, it will cycle the ice maker again. So you could get stuck in a little loop there. So just be mindful, V3 ice maker cycle, let it run one time. When it says ice level low, advance to the next step. And since we don't have any ice in this bin, it's going to say ice level low. And that will let the ice maker know whether it can harvest ice or not. One trick for this refrigerator and the ice makers, the ice bin can hold up to about 500 cubes. See, ice level low, push OK. So I wanted to talk about ice maker for a second. Ice bin holds about 500 cubes. As it's making ice, that bail arm drops down and checks. The ice dumps towards the back rear of the ice bucket. So every once in a while, scoop your ice with your scooper, scoop it to the front of the ice bucket. That way, when the bail arm checks to see if there's room to dump ice, there's more room to dump ice. So that way you'll fill your ice bucket, and that way it's not keeping up with you using it. You're actually just using the ice that it's producing. So here we go. We got V3 Ice Maker NTC. So this is giving us a real-time sensor readout of that ice maker sensor. This is unused. This is your NTC condenser. So it's 32 degrees Celsius up there right now. Now this is both valves open at the same time, 1 and 2. It's just short burst. Light sensor, again, legacy feature not used. Water dispenser. This will work for Fhiaba, but not for Fulgor Milano because we do not have a water dispenser. And we got V1 NTC air sensors now. So this is the V1 section, fresh food. So air sensor is reading positive 20 Celsius. Shiloh, do you know what that is in Fahrenheit off the top of your head? 68. So that makes sense because we've had the door open for quite some time. We shut the compressors down because we put it into demo mode, and then we took it out of demo mode. So that makes sense for it to be right around that temperature. Next one's going to be your evap sensor readout. We're positive 8 on the sensor on the evap on the side here, which is 46 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're getting there. Once that compressor's kicked back on, since we're in service test right now, compressors aren't running. So we're not circulating any Freon, we're not actually cooling. So right now it's actually defrosting in the fresh food section because we're above freezing. It's off-cycle defrost. So the door is open. This is where you would put like a reed switch over, or a magnet over the reed switch, and you can check and see open and close, open and close. There is no humidity sensor. The drawer, open and closed. V3 NTC evap. So this is going to be your evaporator sensor in the freezer section is -3 Celsius. The air sensor in the freezer section right now is -7 Celsius. So what's that, Shiloh? Yeah, so we've been playing with it. Compressors are off right now. That's pretty standard. Last part of the test is your buzzer on. And this is where, let's say, end of test. It's going to kind of go through the splash screen, give you your software versions again, and it's going to go through its initial test just like you would plug it in for the first time. Again, this initial test is just testing the low voltage functions, fans, heaters, electronics, communication, things of that nature. Should only last for about 2 to 3 minutes. After that, you'll have full function of the refrigerator again. So to kind of recap on that, there's only a few things I would go into service mode for because it is a very lengthy test. It is a linear test, and there's only a few things that you're really going to want to go in there to test. So if you have a fan issue, a defrost issue, a compressor issue, or you feel the compressor is not running, you may want to go in there and test those things during service mode. It is not a bad test. It is a very robust test. It will give you a lot of information, but there's only a few things that are necessary to go in there for. Using that manual clean on the Fulgor Milano is going to be your best bet to diagnose any ice making issues. It's going to run everything in the sequence for it to make ice. It's going to cycle the ice maker. It's going to fill with water. It's going to do all of the things. And if one of those things doesn't happen, you can determine that at that point, it'll lead you in the right direction. So now we're back out of the initial test, and it went back to its normal temperatures inside of there right now, which are about what we were just reading in this service mode. So that's kind of it, start to finish on, the actual TFT display, the buttons and what they do, the functions, the settings, the manual clean that you want to pressurize the system after you do a fresh install, because let's pretend you install this machine. You did not run a manual clean. You turn ice maker on. You leave the customer's property. Within 24 hours, 48 hours, the customer's not going to notice any ice and they're going to call for service. And it's because the ice maker is trying to fill with water, but it cannot because it's not pressurized yet. So if that step is forgotten during installation, it very well may cause a service interaction that is unnecessary. So be mindful, always run a water circuit cleaning whenever you install one of these machines. Or whenever you replace your water filter. That's another big one. Whenever you replace the filter, if the customer is using the filter, you want it to pull some water through that filter to remove all the charcoal, make sure that you've got clear ice. So you're going to want to run that manual clean anytime you change that filter. Again, that filter reminder is once a year, 365 days. Do we have any questions in the chat, boys? Nothing? We're running pretty good on time. Anything you feel like I missed, Shiloh, up there? No. Yeah, we went through demo mode. We went through changing temperatures. Oh, you can actually lock temperatures. This is something cool too. There's a little lock up here. If you push and hold, you can actually lock that temperature in. When you lock the temperature in, it deactivates some of your functions. So like you can't turn your ice maker on or off at that point. So if a customer has an issue where they're like, I can't turn my ice maker on, I can't turn my ice maker off, some of my functions aren't working, go into their settings, into their temperature settings, and make sure that they don't have anything locked. If it's locked, that will prevent them from doing certain things or allowing certain of functions to be had, like shopping mode and things like that. So just a quick reminder.
If you lock it, are you able to scroll and still change the temperature? And then
No.
Or it take that option away? What's the lowest temp, maximum temp?
Oh, that is a great question. So freezer, -9, all the way up to +8. Now, reason why I said that's a great question is because the fresh food section can go all the way down to 33 degrees. That's 1 degree away from freezing. So the fact that the machine has the capability to do this, we have some customers that say, well, if it can, I want to. Should you run it at 33 degrees? Probably not. You're probably going to freeze quite a bit of food inside there, quite a bit of product, especially high moisture content. These units, they come from the factory preset at 41 in the fresh food section. Due to all the materials inside of here, it typically runs about 1 to 2 degrees colder than the set temperature. That's why at 41 from the factory, she's running at about 39, 38 degrees actual temperature inside. So, great question about that. Fresh food can go from positive 33 all the way to positive 44. So it comes set at 41. Customers usually like around that 36, 37. They may have some crystals in their milk at that point, but it's going to be cold, cold. I have my personal fridge stays at factory specs, 41 and 0, had no issues. The one issue that I do notice is the vents on the right side or the left side, depending on which refrigerator you have. I love to stick my milk in my big jugs of iced tea and different things right in front of those vents, and I got to remember and remind myself, don't block your vents, don't block your vents. So remember to always remind your customer, don't block the vents. It's going to block airflow and this cause cooling issues, which could cause cooling issues between the two sections, because although they are two separate sections, two separate compressors, they share a condenser. So if one section is struggling, the condenser will be warmer than necessary, which will cause the other section to start to struggle as well. So if we're having some fresh food issues, let's say the fans aren't coming on, the lights aren't going off because the reed switch is bad, and then our temperatures in the fresh food section are up in our high 40s, the freezer is going to start to have effect, and probably the first thing they're going to notice is no ice, because the ice maker sensor needs to be at 14 degrees for it to actually start to harvest or even think about harvesting ice. So they could have a nice deep freeze, frozen ice cream, everything looks great inside of there, but it may only be 18 degrees. So 14 degrees is where the ice maker is going to want to harvest. So fresh food temperature starts to rise up. Freezer can take an effect by that too. Just be mindful, they do share a condenser. That's the only thing they do share. Any other questions in that? I like it. It's a very straightforward, very easy, accessible, user-friendly display. The original LCD version that had multiple buttons around it was a little bit difficult to navigate a customer through. It's the same functions and settings. It's the same setup. It's just done in a different format. Now, kind of like an iPhone, previous generation with the LCD screen is more like an Android, where you have like a back button and an enter button. So you enter in a menu, and then you can enter in another menu, and the back button takes you to a sub menu, to another sub menu. This one, you got an actual home button and a back button. So you can actually go home from wherever you're at and just start fresh. So don't be afraid of your display. The customer cannot get stuck in a position to where they feel like they're going to change anything or hurt anything or, affect the performance of the product. If they do, they can always give us a call for tech support at 877-383-7787.
So, Mike, a question for my servicers out there, just really quickly, if you can give us a little details. If the user interface isn't responding or it needs to be replaced, how do I remove that user interface?
Very easily. So, great question. As you take down this top section glass, if you feel behind here, there's a couple little wing nuts, like little plastic threaded nuts. I'll pull one off and put it up close to the camera for you. But there's plastic thread going through the front side, through the actual top here, and then you've got these little plastic little thread certs that thread onto them, and there's three. There's one in the middle, one on the right, and one on the left. Once you remove these little black nuts, this whole entire piece display will come off, and then your display will be mounted right to the back side of that display. It's a very simple repair to be done. And which kind of brings up to another good point is this machine doesn't have to be moved to be worked on. There's almost virtually every repair can be done with this machine right where it's at. If you have a sealed system issue and you need to run the heat exchanger from the fresh food section down to the compressor, that may be the only time that you may need to have the machine uninstalled, is to run that heat exchanger down the backside. But other than that, most repairs are done from the front with the machine fully installed. Even your water valves, anything down underneath as well. Cool. No more further chats. All right, guys. Well, I thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Peak Performance. Again, this was talking about the TFT service menus on Fulgor Milano and Fhiaba built-in combis and column units. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.